So we've been looking at graphs and understanding that it's really about population changing over time, but the rate of change helps us to measure how quickly the change is occurring and creating a number to describe that rate of change. So there's two steps before we find the rate of change. First is to find out how much did the population increase between 1800 and 1950. So we're going to subtract these two to find the rate of, or the amount of increase. And again, remember that we go from 1800 to 1950 and then to 2000. So from 1800, which is about here, to 1950, that was a period of relatively slow growth. And then we'll calculate again from 1950 to 2000, which will be a period of faster growth. So hopefully the numbers that we calculate will show that. So how much did the population rise? Well, we simply subtract these two. So there will be 1.5 billion. Write the number with words and in standard notation. So it looks like I did it in words and I forgot to write standard notation. So standard notation here would be uh, 1.5 billion. You know how to write that out in standard notation. I don't know if I can do this successfully here. Text box, let's give it a try. 1500. There you go. And then how many years elapsed? 150 years. And again, a note to the subtraction. Sometimes I just put the bigger number first so I don't get any negatives. Definitely 150 years went by during that time period. And we're talking about a population increase, so this being positive also makes sense. But what we have is an amount of increase, and then we divide by the amount of time. So to answer this question, how much did the population increase each year? We take the amount of change in population, and then we divide by the amount of time. So here I show you the process again. Rate of change, amount of change over amount of time. This is the subtraction we did to get 1.5 billion. This is the subtraction to get 150 years. So I wrote this out in standard form, divided by 150, and I end up with 10 million people per year. So this is your first rate of change calculation. It is the same as slope if you've learned that in another algebra class. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So it's the same thing, I'm just trying to make it make more sense. So over the years 1800 to 1950, the world population increased by 10 million people every year. So I'm expecting it to be a greater increase in the second part of that graph when we repeat the calculation. So we will need to use the data up here. We will need to subtract these two numbers and subtract these two numbers, and then we'll take this answer divided by this answer to get the rate of change. So let's see how that works out. 50 years passed, and when we subtract these two, we get 3.5 billion, which I wrote in standard form down here. So take amount of change over amount of time. And this should be something that you put on your notes sheet. So amount of change over amount of time, there's an increase of 70 million people per year in the second part of that graph. So 10 million people every year. Now we're averaging about 70 million new people every year. So that's pretty dramatic.